Have you ever found yourself right there at a crossroads where doing the easy thing just felt wrong somehow, but doing the right thing felt, well, honestly, terrifying?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe it was speaking up in a meeting when everyone else was silent, or, standing firm on something you believe in, or even just facing a personal challenge that seemed completely overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
We've all felt that knot in our stomach, right? That urge to just run away or hide. But what if there was a way to handle those moments? A way to find this deep inner calm, a strength that wasn't about, like, pretending the fear isn't there, but actually rising above it.
Yeah, moving through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Today we're taking a deep dive into something really central in Stoic philosophy. It's the third cardinal virtue, courage, or, in the original Greek, andreia.
Yep.
And look, this isn't the kind of courage you see in, action movies, not the flashy stuff. This is something far more subtle, much more practical for everyday life, and honestly, potentially life-changing. It's about building this inner fortress, this unshakable resolve to act with integrity no matter what's going on outside.
What's really fascinating here, and you touched on it, is how often it's misunderstood, the common idea of courage. It just doesn't quite capture what the Stoics meant by andreia.
Right.
It's not just bravery when facing, physical danger. It's this mental and moral strength, this fortitude that helps us face fear,
Yeah.
but also pain, anxiety, even the huge weight of what other people think.
Oh, that's a big one. Public opinion.
Huge. And doing all that while keeping a calm, rational, principled mind. So our mission today really is to unpack this Stoic idea of courage as grace under pressure.
I like that. Grace under pressure.
Exactly. And we're drawing from a real wealth of sources here. Insights from Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Musonius Rufus, so many others. We've looked at key texts like A Guide to the Good Life, A New Stoicism, Breakfast with Seneca, Letters from a Stoic, Meditations, of course. Man's Search for Meaning provides a modern echo. A whole range, really.
Quite the reading list.
It is. We've pulled from A Handbook for New Stoics, Epictetus, A Stoic and Socratic Guide to Life, Hellenistic Philosophy, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, Lives of the Stoics, Musonius Rufus's Lectures and Sayings, Haddett's work on philosophy as a way of life, The Daily Stoic, The Enchiridion, The Inner Citadel, The Morality of Happiness, Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way, The Practicing Stoic, The Stoic Life, Cicero's Tusculan Disputations. A lot to dig into.
Yeah.
But the goal is simple. Find the most powerful nuggets of wisdom in there. Help you see how this ancient virtue can be like your superpower for living well today.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Let's really try to define what the Stoics meant by andreia. Because, the word Stoic itself in English, it often brings up this image of someone like really grim, maybe unfeeling, just sort of silently putting up with hardship. But that's totally different from actual philosophical Stoicism, isn't it?
Oh, completely different. That's probably the biggest hurdle we need to get over right away. The English adjective stoic, suffering without complaint, being emotionless. It's like a caricature almost. It barely resembles what the actual philosophical Stoics taught and, more importantly, how they tried to live.
So they weren't just glum.
Not at all. Far from being grim or like emotionless robots, the ancient Stoics were often known for their cheerfulness, actually, and their active engagement with the world. They definitely welcomed positive emotions. Many of them, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, were deeply involved in politics and public life.
Right, they weren't hermits.
Definitely not. They were seeking a deeply rational, principled way to live in the world, not escape it. It wasn't about creating some kind of barren emotional desert inside yourself.
Okay, so if it's not about being cold or just, gritting your teeth and bearing it, what is this, andreia? How is it different from just being fearless?
Yeah, that's the key distinction. It's precisely not about the absence of fear. For the Stoics, courage is that mental and moral strength, that fortitude to face, feel pain, anxiety, even public pressure, but to do it with a calm, rational, and principled mind.
Okay, the mind is central.
Absolutely. It's the inner strength that lets you do the right thing, especially when it's hard or uncomfortable or when everyone else is telling you not to. That's a really crucial difference. It acknowledges that, yeah, fear and pain are natural human things.
Yeah.
But then it asks the critical question, okay, how do I respond? What does my reason tell me is the right way to act in this specific moment? Seneca, in his letters, really gets at this. He talks about true strength coming from a delight in his own resources, the inner joys, the resilience of your own mind. And he says these are way better than any sort of fleeting external pleasures or comforts.
That makes a lot more sense. So it's less about some big, heroic one-off act
Right.
and more about an internal attitude, a choice in how we meet the day-to-day stuff. And I remember you saying it's not like a standalone virtue either. How does it fit into the bigger picture of Stoicism?
Exactly. It's deeply internal. It's rooted in what Epictetus famously called the dichotomy of control, this core idea that, look, external events, mostly outside our power, but our internal responses, our judgments, our desires, our goals, those are always within our control.
The only things we truly own.
Precisely. As Epictetus put it, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, to have whatsoever he wishes is in no man's power, right? You can't just wish things into existence. But, he says, it is in every man's power not to wish for what he has not, but cheerfully to employ what comes to him.
Yeah.
That just shifts the whole game, doesn't it? From trying to wrestle the uncontrollable world into submission to mastering your own inner landscape.
Yeah, it really does.
And you're spot on. It's not isolated. Courage is one of the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. But they aren't like separate boxes you tick off. They're more like different facets of the same diamond, which is overall excellence of character. And that excellence fundamentally comes from wisdom applied to different areas of life. Courage, specifically, that's wisdom applied to mastering our fears. It's about overcoming those unhealthy passions, things like excessive anger, crippling fear, overwhelming grief, runaway anxiety, all the stuff that gets in the way of clear thinking and acting justly. So what this really means for you, listening right now, is you don't need to be a soldier facing down cannons or, some public figure making grand speeches to be courageous. You just need to be human, facing your everyday stuff.
Like what?
Well, maybe it's that difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or a setback at work. Or maybe it's an internal battle, with self-doubt or procrastination. Courage is applying your principles, your reason, in those moments. It's the consistent daily choice to respond based on your values, even when it feels hard or scary. It's the courage to choose your response, not just react.
Defining it helps, for sure. But these ideas, they really click when you see them in action, don't they? When you see actual people living this stuff out. History, especially Stoic history, gives us some, frankly, incredible examples of this grace under pressure. It makes it less abstract, more real.
Oh, absolutely. The stories bring it to life. Take Seneca, for instance, his execution under Emperor Nero. Just picture this. Seneca, this renowned philosopher and statesman, accused of conspiracy, probably falsely, and ordered by the emperor to kill himself.
A death sentence, basically.
Exactly. And his friends are there, they're weeping, they're completely distraught. But Seneca, in that absolute final moment of adversity, he actually kind of gently scolds them, asks them, what happened to your stoicism? Where's your philosophy now?
Oh.
Then he calmly embraces his wife, tries to comfort her. His arteries are cut, but because he's old, the blood flows really slowly. So they have to cut the arteries in his legs and behind his knees, too. Still, he lingers. He asks for poison hemlock, like Socrates drinks it, but even that doesn't work quickly because his body is cold and the circulation is poor.
Good grief, it sounds agonizing.
It must have been. Finally, he asks to be carried into a warm bath, hoping the steam and heat will hasten the end, which eventually does by suffocating him.
That's intense. But what does it show us about courage beyond just, enduring pain?
What Seneca's death really highlights isn't just physical endurance, it's the Stoic idea of inner freedom taken to its absolute extreme. It's this radical notion that even when your body is failing, when everything external is being taken away, the choice of how you respond internally, the sanctuary of your rational mind that remains yours, untouchable.
So it wasn't about denying the pain.
No, not at all, pretending it wasn't happening. It was about recognizing that suffering, the mental anguish about the pain, is often a product of our judgments. Seneca chose dignity, integrity over despair. He valued his philosophical principles more than life itself. He was showing that delight in his own resources, just like he wrote about in his letters, showing how someone can find this deep inner peace, even facing death, by focusing only on what's truly theirs, their virtue, their character.
That's a really stark, powerful example. But, going back to that unfeeling Stoic stereotype, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, he rigorously practiced Stoicism, right?
Yeah.
But he also felt grief very deeply, personally. How does that fit? Does it challenge this idea of Stoic strength?
That's such a great point, and it really gets to the heart of the nuance in Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius's experiences actually reinforce the Stoic view. They don't contradict it. There's this story where he wept uncontrollably when one of his beloved childhood tutors died.
An emperor weeping.
Yes, and his adoptive father, the Emperor Antoninus Pius, saw how upset he was and famously said something like, "Let him be only a man for once, for neither philosophy nor empire takes away natural feeling."
That's quite something.
It is. And years later, Marcus was apparently moved to tears again in public. He was listening to an advocate in court who said, "Blessed are they who died in the plague." And you have to remember, Marcus himself had lost several young children to illness. The plague ravaged Rome during his reign.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this isn't a contradiction of Stoicism. It's actually a perfect example of what Musonius Rufus, another Stoic teacher, suggested. Stoic philosophers weren't immune to negative emotions like grief. They felt them. The difference was they were significantly less likely to be overwhelmed or controlled by them. And importantly, they were particularly good at welcoming and cultivating positive emotions. They were often noted for being quite cheerful, actually.
So the tears weren't weakness.
Not at all. They were a sign of his humanity, his connection, his recognition of loss. But it happened within this larger framework of philosophical resilience. The grief was felt, deeply felt, but it didn't paralyze his reason or stop him from doing his duty as emperor. He understood these feelings would pass, and his core commitment to virtue, to rationality, remained unshaken. It shows that eudaimonia, that flourishing life, wasn't about being happy-go-lucky all the time. It was about this deep, stable sense of purpose and excellence, even amidst life's inevitable pains and sorrows.
Okay, so it's about feeling the emotion, acknowledging it, but not letting it steer the ship, basically.
Yeah.
Not letting it derail your principles or your duties. And Marcus didn't just deal with personal grief, did he? He dealt with people, lots of people, which, let's be honest, can often be just as challenging, maybe more so.
Huh. Yes, absolutely.
I remember reading in his private journals, his meditations, about his, let's say, intense dislike of humanity at times, which makes his public actions, his commitment to duty, seem even more courageous in a way.
Precisely. That's a fantastic insight. Beyond his personal grief, Marcus explicitly rejected the idea of doing our social duty in a selective manner. He didn't believe in just dealing with the people you liked or found easy.
No cherry-picking your interactions.
Exactly. He believed in the courage to actively confront annoying people, his term, and to work for the common welfare anyway. He even said we should strive to show true love to those with whom destiny has surrounded us. This is huge because, as you said, his private writings reveal this deep frustration, this intense dislike of humanity sometimes. Yet his philosophy demanded he engage, serve, and connect with others despite that struggle.
He wrote that thing about waking up and telling yourself you're going to meet meddling, ungrateful people.
Yes. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and unsocial. He knew what he was facing. He anticipated it. But his stoicism required him to engage anyway with justice and rationality.
That feels like a very real, relatable kind of courage.
It really is. It's the strength to handle difficult social dynamics, to contribute to the common good, even when you'd rather just retreat. It shows this really proactive, not passive form of courage, the courage to show up for your social duties, to face conflict constructively when needed, and to work for something bigger than yourself, even when your own inclinations are screaming at you to just, stay home.
It's the courage to choose service over just personal comfort or ease.
Exactly. And it wasn't just emperors like Marcus or philosophers facing death like Seneca. Stoics from all walks of life showed this kind of steadfastness, proving that this inner strength can really blossom even when everything external seems to be working against you. Cato the Younger comes to mind here.
Cato, Caesar's nemesis.
The very same. Cato is a prime example of this unwavering constancy, this commitment to principle. He famously practiced hardship. He wasn't just waiting for it to happen. He actively trained for it.
How so?
Well, he'd intentionally do things like walk barefoot in the cold, or wear really simple, uncomfortable clothes, or go without food or water for longer than necessary. Not because he was an ascetic who hated pleasure, but to train his mind. To inoculate himself against the need for comforts, to make himself indifferent to externals, so he'd be ready if hardship actually came.
Preparing himself.
Exactly. And when it came to politics, he faced Julius Caesar and the massive political shifts of his time with this unfailing constancy and commitment to principles. He refused to compromise his Republican ideals, even when it became politically disastrous. Ultimately, he chose suicide rather than live under Caesar's tyranny.
A heavy choice.
a deeply philosophical one for him, rooted in his conviction that living virtuously, according to his principles, was more important than life itself. This wasn't just political posturing, it was the culmination of a lifetime of sincere, rigorous practice of his Stoic beliefs. He had trained himself to be indifferent to externals, including his own life, when his core values were at stake. It's courage as a deliberately cultivated virtue.
And then there was Musonius Rufus, right? He faced exile, which was a huge deal in the ancient world.
That's a huge deal. Musonius Rufus was banished by Nero to Garos, this barren, desolate island. It was considered one of the worst places to be sent. But did he collapse into despair? No. He made the best of it. He actually started studying the island's environment, adapting, and he kept teaching philosophy.
Teaching in exile.
Yes.
Mhm.
He even advised a Syrian king from Jaros. And this was a man who was apparently just as comfortable lecturing freed slaves as he was royalty. He always maintained that there is no position so high or so low that it is not improved by the four virtues: justice, temperance, wisdom, and courage. His courage was in his adaptability, his resilience, his refusal to let external circumstances dictate his commitment to his principles, and his mission to teach. He turned exile itself into a philosophical exercise.
And if we're talking about overcoming adversity, we absolutely have to mention Epictetus. His life story is just
Wow.
a testament to inner strength against conditions most of us can't even imagine. He really lived this stuff before he ever formally taught it.
Absolutely. Epictetus' story is foundational. Born a slave in the Roman Empire, physically weak and lame. Some accounts say his master, a nasty piece of work named Epictetus, who was himself a freedman of Nero, ironically broke his leg. Others say he was lame from childhood.
So born into slavery, physically disabled.
Under a cruel master, in a society that literally viewed him as property, not a person. Yet from these incredibly harsh beginnings, he rises to become one of the most influential Stoic philosophers ever. His personal journey, surviving and finding wisdom under such duress, is maybe the most powerful illustration that external circumstances, no matter how terrible, do not have the final say over your inner fortitude.
Did his physical condition influence his teaching?
Profoundly. He often reflected on his lameness, but he saw it as an external indifference, something outside his prejudices, his moral choice, his sphere of volition. It wasn't truly him. This allowed him, maybe even forced him, to focus his entire teaching on what lies completely in our power: our judgments, our desires, our goals, our inner world. The direct consequences he hammers home in the Enchiridion is that nothing outside the mind or volition can, of its own nature, constrain or frustrate us unless we choose to let it do so.
Unless we let it.
Exactly. It's our assent, our judgment about the external, that gives it power over us.
So these stories, Seneca, Marcus, Cato, Musonius, Epictetus, they aren't just like interesting historical footnotes we can admire from afar.
Not at all. They are powerful, living demonstrations of internal freedom, of resilience, of applying these philosophical principles when everything else, wealth, status, health, freedom, even life itself, is being stripped away. They show us really clearly that courage isn't some rare gift given only to heroes. It's a strength you can cultivate, an active choice available to absolutely anyone willing to put in the work, willing to train their mind.
Okay, so we've explored the definition, we've seen these incredible historical examples. Now, let's bring it home. What does this all mean for you, our listener, right now, today? How can we take these ancient, powerful ideas and actually use them? How do we cultivate our own grace under pressure in our modern, often pretty chaotic lives? The Stoics weren't just thinkers. They gave us tools, didn't they? Specific practices, spiritual exercises designed to build exactly this inner strength, this resilience.
They absolutely did. And one of the most fundamental, maybe the most fundamental practice, which we touched on earlier, is what Epictetus called the dichotomy of control.
Right. What's in our power and what's not.
Exactly.
Oh.
He taught that nothing lies completely in our power except our judgments, our desires, our goals, basically, our inner world of choice and response. Our bodies, our health, our possessions, other people's actions, world events. These are not entirely ours to command. They're influenced by us, maybe, but not fully controlled.
And why is making that distinction so important?
Because it's incredibly clarifying. It allows you to sort things out, to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, this stuff over here, externals, outside my direct power. This stuff over here, my choices, my responses, within my power. And then you ask that crucial question Epictetus posed. Where shall I seek the good and the bad? The answer, within, in the things that are my own.
It tells you where to focus your energy.
Precisely. So much of our anxiety, our frustration, our wasted effort comes from trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable. The traffic, what your boss thinks, whether it rains on your picnic, past mistakes, even our health to a large degree. These are externals. By courageously acknowledging what is not in your power, you free up a huge amount of mental and emotional bandwidth.
To focus on what you can do something about.
Exactly. Your responses, your attitude, your next action. So for a practical application, maybe try this. Set aside a few minutes each day, maybe on your commute, maybe before bed. Just reflect. What happened today that was truly in my control? What wasn't? And when you feel that emotional discomfort, rising frustration, fear, anger, try having an at-hand phrase.
Like a mantra.
Sort of. Something simple you can repeat to yourself, like, is this within my control? Or, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I'm doing this to build courage. Or even, this feeling is here to help me practice overcoming anxiety. Just reminding yourself of the purpose behind facing the discomfort can help reframe it. It turns it from just something you're passively enduring into an active opportunity to practice virtue, to make a conscious, courageous choice in that tough moment.
That feels like a very active way to engage with difficulty.
Yeah.
It also makes me think of another Stoic technique, one that might sound a bit, I don't know, negative or pessimistic at first glance, but you mentioned it actually helps us appreciate what we have while also building resilience for potential loss. It's about preparing for negative events, but not in a gloomy way.
Ah, yes, you're talking about negative visualization, or the fancy Latin term, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils.
Sounds cheerful.
It does, doesn't it? But counterintuitively, it's not about being morbid or making yourself miserable. Quite the opposite, actually. Far from making people glum, this practice, as William Irvine explains really well in A Guide to the Good Life, tends to increase how much people enjoy the world. Why? Because it stops them from taking everything for granted.
How does that work?
By regularly, intentionally contemplating the potential loss of things you value. Your loved ones imagine, just for a moment, that they weren't here. Your health, imagine it failing. Your possessions, imagine losing them. By doing this mental exercise, the Stoics found they became remarkably appreciative of these things in the present moment.
Because you realize they aren't guaranteed.
Exactly. Think about that picnic example again. The Stoic, who has perhaps contemplated the possibility that this gathering might not have happened, maybe a friend got sick, the weather turned bad, or worse, enjoys that picnic more intensely, more gratefully than someone who just assumes good things will always be there. They're savoring the present, fully aware it's fragile and temporary.
So it's gratitude training, in a way.
It is, but it's also resilience training. Because by mentally preparing for a potential loss or hardship, you build kind of emotional shock absorber. It prepares your mind for the inevitable heartache when life does eventually snatch these people and things away, as Seneca might say. It builds mental fortitude, making you more resilient, more able to face actual adversity with greater calm when it happens. It's a proactive defense against future suffering, which paradoxically boosts your present joy and your courage to face uncertainty.
That's a fascinating twist. So it makes you more alive to the present, not less. Okay, but what about the stuff that's already happened? The past mistakes? Or the things unfolding right now that feel totally overwhelming and unchangeable? How do we find grace and courage there? So many of us fight reality, right? Trying to mentally undo or change what's already done or what's happening this very second.
That's a really important question because it leads to another potentially counterintuitive Stoic idea. Fatalism, not just about the past, which, most people kind of accept can't change the past, but the Stoics also advocated a kind of fatalism about the present moment.
Fatalism about the present. How does that work?
Well, think about it. The Stoics argued that it is impossible for me to act in a way that alters what is happening right now. Why? Because the instant you try to act, the instant you intervene, that specific moment has already slipped into the past. It's gone, unchangeable.
Huh. Okay, I need to wrap my head around that.
Think of it like this. Right now, as you're listening, the words I just spoke, they're already history. You can't rewind this exact second to change them. That coffee you might have just spilled, that email that just landed with bad news, that precise instant is done, immutable.
So we can't change the second.
Not the second itself. Now, this is crucial. This is not about being passive about the future. It's not about giving up or saying whatever happens, happens regarding your future choices and actions. Absolutely not. It's specifically about recognizing the utter futility of mentally fighting against the immediate, unalterable reality of the past and the present instant.
And how does accepting that help? Why is that courageous?
Because it frees you. It liberates an incredible amount of mental energy that we waste in regret, in wishing things were different right now, in fighting battles that are already over. By courageously accepting what is in this moment and what was, you can redirect all that precious focus and energy where it actually matters onto your response, your next action, your choices moving forward. It's an act of profound mental discipline and self-awareness. You stop wasting courage on the unchangeable and apply it to your sphere of control, your volitions.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about directing your strength wisely. Which brings me back to that colleague I mentioned. I had this moment last week, really wanted to just shut my office door, avoid this person who just complains constantly. It felt like the easiest path. What would Marcus Aurelius, the guy who served the public despite his own frustrations, say about that? It often feels easier, maybe even safer, to just retreat from annoying people or difficult interactions. But you're saying Stoicism demands a more active, courageous approach.
Oh, Marcus would definitely have something to say about just shutting the door. Remember, despite his own confessed intense dislike of humanity at times, he explicitly argued against avoiding or just giving in to annoying people, even though, yeah, it would make life seem simpler.
So what did he suggest instead?
He urged us to confront them and work for the common welfare, to engage. He believed we should try to show true love, his words, even to those difficult people with whom destiny has surrounded us. He also said anyone seeking wisdom needs to cultivate his own character, but also seek help from others who share similar values, and crucially, to listen to criticism patiently.
Even from annoying people.
Well, maybe not seek criticism from the chronic complainer, but certainly engage with them constructively for the common good rather than just retreating into your shell. The courage here is fundamentally social. It's the fortitude to engage, not escape, even when it's draining or unpleasant, because it serves a larger purpose, the common welfare, maintaining social harmony, fulfilling your role. It highlights this really proactive rather than passive form of courage. The courage to deal with flawed human beings, including ourselves, and contribute positively, even when your personal preference is just to withdraw. It's a real test of your commitment to justice and community.
It really is. And that makes me think about how much our own internal commentary, our thoughts about these events or people can make things so much worse. Our judgments can really amplify the suffering, can't they? How we frame things internally seems critical. How do the Stoics help us reframe those perceptions? Because I can hear someone listening thinking, okay, but am I just supposed to become numb, detached from everything, stop feeling? How do we ensure this isn't about becoming emotionless?
That's a vital point, and it leads us straight to another core Stoic practice, cognitive distancing, or you could call it reframing. It stems directly from that famous Epictetus line. It is not things or sensations that upset us, but our judgments about them.
The judgments are the problem.
Or at least the source of the suffering. The goal isn't to become numb or stop feeling initial reactions. The Stoics called these first movements and saw them as natural. The goal is to learn to observe those reactions and then consciously choose not to assent to the unhelpful or irrational judgments that often automatically follow. The aim is to grasp external things objectively, seeing them as indifferent in the Stoic sense, meaning not inherently good or bad for your moral character, your virtue.
Can you give an example?
Sir, Epictetus says, if your ship is lost at sea, objectively describe it. The ship is lost. Don't immediately add the value judgment. This is awful. My life is ruined. Stick to the facts. If someone insults you, acknowledge the event. He insulted me. But crucially, Epictetus advises, do not add the value judgment that it has done him any harm.
So separate the event from your interpretation of its meaning or impact.
Exactly. The practical application is actively working to create that space between the stimulus, the event, the sensation, and your response, your judgment, your emotional reaction. Seneca noted that the fear of pain often causes more suffering than the pain itself. By sticking with the bare facts, there is a sensation of pain in my leg, rather than layering on catastrophic narratives. This pain is unbearable, it's going to last forever. You can, as Marcus Aurelius put it, put paid to many anxieties in life.
It sounds like hard work, though.
It is hard work. It's rigorous mental training, just like an athlete trains their body. It takes real courage to challenge your immediate, often deeply ingrained, automatic negative thoughts and judgments. It takes courage to look at a difficult situation with stark, rational clarity instead of letting fear or anger hijack your perception. It's the courage to choose a reasoned interpretation over an impulsive, emotional one again and again.
And finally, pulling all these threads together, the Stoics constantly remind us that so much of our anxiety stems from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, instead of grounding ourselves in the only time we actually have, right now, the present moment. This feels like a really core piece of finding that grace under pressure, doesn't it? It feels like where all these other practices kind of land.
It really is a convergence point. Focusing on the present moment is absolutely central to Stoic practice. Seneca talks about this powerfully in his letters. He urges us, do not disturb yourself by imagining your whole life at once. Don't always be thinking about what sufferings and how many might possibly befall you. Don't borrow trouble from the future.
So what should we do instead?
He advises, ask instead, in each present circumstance, what is there about this that is unendurable and unbearable? You will be embarrassed to answer.
Because usually the present moment itself isn't unbearable.
Exactly. Think about it. How often are you truly suffering in this precise second? Usually our suffering comes from anticipating a future pain or regretting a past event. The present moment, if we can fully inhabit it, actually offers a refuge from these imagined or remembered troubles. And fundamentally, it's the only place where life actually happens.
We live now.
We live now. If we spend all our mental energy worrying about the future, we fail to attend to what's happening right now. We fail to truly live. Seneca warned that when we do this, foresight, the greatest blessing of the human condition, is turned into an evil, because we're constantly anticipating bad things, poisoning our present reality. The courage here is the courage to confront the now fully. To be present with its demands, its opportunities, its discomforts, rather than escaping into anxieties about what was or what might be. It's the courage to engage with reality as it unfolds, trusting that your trained mind can handle what is actually here.
This really does feel like a complete system for living, and right at the very core of Stoic courage, and really all the Stoic virtues, is reason. Our capacity for rational thought. It's what makes us human, isn't it? And it's meant to be our guide through all this complexity. It's not about being unfeeling. It seems profoundly about being thoughtful.
Precisely. Rationality isn't just a tool for the Stoics, it's the guiding light. It illuminates the path to virtue and, ultimately, to a flourishing life, to eudaimonia. Seneca put it clearly in his letters. To find tranquility, we need to use our reasoning ability to drive away all that excites or affrights us. If we can manage that, he says, it leads to unbroken tranquility and enduring freedom, and even a boundless joy that is firm and unalterable.
So reason leads to joy.
In a stable, deep sense, yes. But it's crucial, again, to grasp that the Stoics weren't trying to kill off all emotion. That's the persistent misunderstanding. They were focused on regulating what they called unhealthy passions, things like uncontrolled anger, paralyzing fear, debilitating grief, chronic anxiety, because these specific emotional states interfere with clear reasoning and just action. They actively welcomed positive emotions, joy, love, contentment, benevolence, seeing them as natural expressions of a soul living in accordance with reason and virtue.
Okay, so it's not about being cold. It's about not letting negative emotions run the show.
Exactly. It's about being guided by reason so that emotions don't hijack your ability to think clearly and act rightly. Take pity, for instance. We often see pity today as a virtue, right? Compassion. But for the Stoics, pity was problematic. They saw it as a form of emotional distress, a suffering with someone that serves no purpose and impairs good judgment.
Why impair judgment?
Because it could lead you to make irrational decisions based on sentimentality, rather than true justice, or what's genuinely helpful in the long run. They advocated for active compassion and helping others, absolutely, but motivated by reason, duty, and benevolence, not by sharing in the other person's distress. This takes enormous courage, the courage to consistently apply rational thought, especially when your emotions are screaming at you to do otherwise. It's a constant discipline. Letting reason, not raw feeling or impulse, guide your response and actions.
And when we tie all these practices together, the dichotomy of control, negative visualization, accepting the present, rationally engaging with others and our own thoughts, it all points towards that ultimate Stoic goal. A life of virtue, what they called eudaimonia. It's not just about coping with bad moments, it's about actively shaping ourselves into excellent human beings, isn't it?
That's exactly right. These aren't just coping mechanisms, they are tools for character formation. Virtue, for the Stoics, simply means excellence of character. It's the process of fulfilling our unique human function well, which for them meant thinking clearly and reasoning excellently. They genuinely loved wisdom and virtue above all else, believing virtue alone was sufficient for eudaimonia.
Sufficient for happiness, basically.
Sufficient for flourishing, for living well. Remember, eudaimonia isn't just feeling good, it's being good, in the sense of functioning excellently as a human being. Now, joy and peace of mind often arise as side effects of living virtuously, but they aren't the primary goal. The goal is the stable, deep sense of purpose and excellence that comes from living in accordance with reason, regardless of your external circumstances. As the Stoic life puts it, the primary mission of the Stoics is to be helpful to others and serve the greater good. But doing it in that spirit, as it turns out, makes them happy.
So virtue benefits others and yourself.
Exactly. It reveals courage and all the virtues as deeply proactive and outward-looking. They're driven by this commitment to the common welfare, to acting for the sake of others, even when your own immediate interests or comfort might seem to point elsewhere. It's this continuous active striving towards moral excellence, making sure your actions line up with your deepest, most rational values. It takes real courage to consistently prioritize the common good, to engage in justice and kindness, especially when selfishness or ease is tempting you. It's the courage to fully embrace your nature as a rational, social being.
It really does sound like a comprehensive framework for life.
Mm-hmm.
But like anything truly worthwhile, it's obviously not something you just achieve overnight, right? It's a practice, a constant training. How do we approach that ongoing effort without just feeling overwhelmed by it all?
That's the perfect way to frame it, and it's a crucial question. Stoicism is, at its heart, a regimen for training the mind. Just like an athlete trains their body through repetition and discipline. It involves consistent learning, yes, but more importantly, diligent practice, what the Greeks called meleto, and rigorous training, ascesis. This is not a passive armchair philosophy.
You have to live it.
You have to live it. Marcus Aurelius, even though he sometimes sounded a bit dismissive of just reading books, was entirely focused on getting straight to putting things to the test in everyday life by following the dictates of our guiding reason. His meditations are essentially him coaching himself, reminding himself over and over to apply the principles, not just think about them.
So daily effort.
Daily effort, daily reflection, actively meditating on Stoic ideas, practicing self-control in small everyday situations, consciously choosing to undo unnecessary discomfort, deliberately selecting virtuous responses in your interactions with others. The courage here isn't just in facing some huge crisis. It's in the consistent, often unglamorous, daily effort to improve, to align yourself more closely with reason and virtue. It's the courage of commitment to lifelong self-mastery, knowing it's a journey, not a destination. A continuous striving to make significant progress in a genuinely Stoic way of life. It's about actively managing your attention, your imagination, your intentions, how you deliberate your emotions, and ultimately your conduct every single day.
Wow. Okay. So wrapping this up, what we've really seen today is that Stoic courage, Andrea, it's so much more than just physical bravery, isn't it?
Much more.
It's this steadfast commitment to using our reason, to living virtuously, especially when we're facing fear or pain or anxiety, or even just the intense pressure of what other people think. It really is that idea of grace under pressure, this deep internal strength that lets you do the right thing consistently, no matter how hard it feels or what the potential fallout might be. It boils down to choosing your response, choosing your values, and then having the courage to live them out day by day, moment by moment.
And this really brings up an important question for everyone listening, doesn't it? How often do you let fear or anxiety or maybe just worrying about what others will think steer you away from what you know deep down is the right path? The Stoics would challenge you, gently but firmly, to remember that your inner freedom, that capacity for reasoned choice, is always available to you. It's like an inner citadel that external events can't actually breach unless you allow them to. They offer not just a philosophy to admire, but a practical toolkit for building and strengthening that unshakable inner core.
A toolkit for resilience.
Exactly. So maybe here's a final thought to chew on. Viktor Frankl, reflecting on his horrific experiences in Nazi concentration camps in his book Man's Search for Meaning, observed something profoundly Stoic. He saw that even in the most degrading, inhumane conditions imaginable, individuals still retain the power to choose their attitude, to find meaning, to cultivate an internal freedom that the external horrors couldn't touch.
The last human freedom, he'd call it.
The last human freedom, the choice of one's attitude. This resonates so deeply with Stoicism. The Stoics, much like Frankl centuries later, would suggest that ultimately your worth can be measured by the things upon which he sets his heart. So the provocative question for you today is, what will you set your heart on? What core value, what principle of reason or justice will you choose to courageously uphold today, even when it's difficult, even when it pushes against the easy path?
Yeah.
And maybe more importantly, what one small, concrete, courageous step can you take, starting right now, to live just a little bit more in alignment with that deeper purpose?